All right. Hey, everybody. It's Mr. Smedes, and today we are reviewing for the third and final APES exam. If you're watching this live, it's June 10th, 2021, and this is a weird year because we had 3 exam dates. So we are on the third one here. So don't worry, I didn't forget about you guys. Like I said on Instagram earlier today, glad to see you guys here. Oh, look at that. And Kyra just pops right on with without even needing to be told. That is incredible. All right, look at that. So we've got our chat moderator too, guys. So if you have questions and I don't get to them, Kyra is our chat moderator. She's happy to answer questions and assist you here in the final moments of your studying. One thing that is neat about this third exam is that it's a lot smaller group. So like right now, looks like 33 folks are on. And compare that to the first exam, there were 800 people. The chat was kind of a nightmare, to be honest. And then the second exam, it was still pretty high. It was like 300 to 400 people. So I expect the chat to be a little more calm tonight. What that means is I'm really going to actually slow down and answer more of your questions in the chat. So why don't we start with people just, popping in, letting us know where they're studying from and maybe like a topic that they're nervous about or a question that they have about the exam. Hey, Rebecca. Yes, and then Kyra shared a really valuable resource that I will be referencing all throughout tonight, which is the link tree. So fitting that it's a tree, given that we're learning about AP environmental science. So that's awesome. You'll be able to just sort through that and really check out tons and tons of resources. Like I said, what I'm going to do tonight more than anything is point you in the direction of how to study in these final hours. Recommend the what I think is the biggest return on your investment in terms of studying. And then I'll answer a lot of questions. Again, since there are so many fewer of you compared to the other exams, I can actually take the time to keep up with the chat and check in and see what your questions are. So I'm excited about that. Oh, look at that. Kowalty Dash. Kowalty Dash is a regular on the channel. Definitely tunes in a lot. So is Rebecca Wu. I know she has been studying hard here. She's excited about this exam. Got Kaylee from New York, Isaac from Washington, Claire from Maryland, and Rebecca's from Southern California. Very cool. Yeah, and remember, trees are cool. Definitely. Doodle Bob, nervous about terrestrial biomes. I'll try to give you some pointers there shortly. Got test tomorrow, having a bit of trouble with the math. Yes, Kaylee, we are going to spend a lot of time on the math. So you will be well covered. I'm going to grab my water here, but then we'll just take another minute or so to welcome folks to the live. And, I don't think a lot of folks will be watching the replay because most of you are probably getting ready for the exam tomorrow. But we'll take a few more minutes and then we'll get started. All right, we've got the phosphorus cycle, ecological cycles. Yeah, great question, Rudy. We will do some math for sure. Yeah, and then Gayada, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, carbon cycle, definitely. And I'll show you a kind of a pointer I have when it comes to the carbon cycle. All right, George says hi from California. Welcome, George. Glad you're here. Hi from Oregon. Ooh, I've got some recommendations for you then, Olivia. In fact, let's just get right to these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little bit out of order. I'm going to actually talk about the carbon cycle and the pollutants right now because we're going to go into the math and we're going to cover math well. And then we will talk about carbon cycle and pollutants. One thing that's nice, Kavi, when it comes to rock layers, not really very important in terms of the overall, what's covered. So I would not worry about the lithosphere, asthenosphere. Not likely going to be on the exam. Oh, and look at that. Amelia is back just to say thank you. We always appreciate that. It's always good to hear back from people. Yeah, just letting us know that they felt like it went well. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through some basic overall things that apply to everybody, and then I'm going to do the carbon cycle and specific pollutants, maybe answer a few more questions in the chat, and then we'll look at math, because math is critical. Before we could dive into this, though, take a deep breath. And remember that you're not your exam score. So I've told people this in the other exam administrations. You can still study environmental science in college. You can still go to whatever college you want. Maybe not whatever, you know, kind of tough to get into Harvard, but you can still go to a great college. You can still pursue environmental science, even if you don't get a 5 or 4 or 3 on the AP environmental science exam. So take a deep breath. Remember that if the ocean can calm itself, so can you. We're both salt water mixed with air. So ocean, huge, massive body of water, it can become calm, and so can you. Something that I think is just hopefully centering for you, relaxing as you're heading into the exam. I see a lot more things coming in the chat, and I will definitely circle back to those things. Try to hit the content pieces a little, and then we'll get into the math. So before we go into specific review questions, though, we have 10 tips for the digital exam. And then, yes, Kyra is a verified APES scholar veteran. And so she is definitely going to be able to answer a lot of questions in the chat. And so I will just remind you guys to stay, you know, active in the chat. And if I miss something, there's a great chance that Kyra will have caught it and be able to just point you in the right directions of things. So she's doing a great job in there, and she'll just keep answering questions as I go. So here are 10 tips for the digital exam. The first one is complete the exam setup. You've probably done this, but if you haven't completed the exam setup, go do that. You should have gotten an email telling you how. Make sure you have the digital app. Make sure that you complete the setup. The second thing is make sure to get 8 hours of sleep, and then give yourself a break before the exam. So my students took the exam on May 27th. We went outside for like an hour and a half before the exam. We just sat in the grass. We flipped through our textbooks. We just kind of tried to lower our anxiety levels and give our eyes a break, because looking at a computer screen for 3 straight hours when you take this exam can be draining. So go sit outside, open your textbook, read some paper notes, and just kind of like try to de-stress going into the exam. It's good to keep a clear head. All right, third tip is going to refer back to something that someone asked. I want to say it was Rebecca earlier in the chat, maybe asked about multiple choice questions. So Rebecca and anybody else concerned about multiple choice. Read the prompt twice. A lot of times something will jump out at you as an obvious distractor, and you can get rid of that. And now you're down to just 3 options, and that makes things a lot easier, because you know you were looking at 4, now you're looking at 3. And then what I like to tell students is go with the answer you can't find anything wrong with. So a lot of times they're going to be, you know, a bunch of parts to a multiple choice answer. There might be 3 or 4 kind of components or pieces of the answer. If you can find something that's wrong with even one of them, you can eliminate that answer. One thing that happens a lot of times is the answer will be factually correct, like what they say, but it won't be an economic impact, or it won't be an economic disadvantage. So watch out for that. Make sure that if they're asking for an economic disadvantage, an environmental impact, that whatever they're giving is an actual disadvantage as opposed to like an advantage or something neutral. Or if they're asking about an environmental issue, be sure that the answer you're picking is an environmental issue. It may be a great answer factually, but it may be more of an economic, you know, or ecological. Now, blurred the lines there a little bit, environmental, ecological, but you get the idea. Tip number 4, read all FRQ prompts 2 times and ask yourself, is this initial answer that I'm thinking of, because your head will go to an answer initially, is it answering this prompt? So what I mean by that is, again, if you're asked a question about economic disadvantages and you go right to biodiversity loss, but you don't actually connect that to economy, to money, you know, you're going to lose that point. And so read the answer twice. I like to tell students even like, assume you missed something, you know, assume that you might have overread or underread. I mean, like, you know, skipped past something. And so I think it's super helpful to read it twice and then make sure that the answer you're giving is aligned to the question. Unfortunately, we don't have multiple choice practice questions really. You'd have to go to AP Classroom. Your teacher could assign you some. We're really going to be focused on the FRQs just because that's where you have the biggest room based on your strategy to change your grade. You're not going to change your multiple choice grade very much right now tonight. Like you might get a couple more points than you would have by reviewing some key concepts that help you on multiple choice, but you kind of know what you know at 8 p.m. before the exam. But you can definitely fine tune your writing a little more, and you could earn a few extra points on the FRQ, and that could be the difference between a 2 and a 3. So unfortunately, if you're concerned about multiple choice, we're really going to be focused on FRQ, but we'll also do some content review that could help there. Another good question here is, do you think the actual exam will be harder than the digital practice exam? I don't know, but I think that the purpose of college board putting out the practice is to be close to the difficulty of the actual exam. So I'd say they should be similar, but it's hard to know for sure. I will say the exam will probably feel harder, which is okay. Don't panic because it's the real thing. You're going to have a little bit of stress, and that's okay. Just remember to stay calm, read every prompt twice, and then go with your best answer. On FRQs, navigate between each individual letter. This is something that came up with my students and many students I've heard of, where when you go to answer in the digital format, you want to just make sure you're skipping between each letter as opposed to, you know, just writing the whole thing under one part. So just be careful. Just look closely at the digital app and make sure you're navigating through it clearly. Do my content videos help for multiple choice? Absolutely, George. 100%. I look at the College Board's course and exam description, and I make each of my videos directly based on it. So the videos that I make should be as close as I can align them to the College Board's exam. You know, have never seen the exam. I don't know what it looks like this year, but they're going to base it off of this thing right here. This is the course and exam description behind me, and that's what I base all my videos off. So it's as aligned as I can get it. Some more tips for everybody. Take your time on the FRQs. Slow down. And if anything, I would skip 1 to 2 of the explain prompts if you're low on time. If you've been writing a lot of practice FRQs and you're like a well-oiled machine, like you're like, I'm good on this, I know what to do, you know, answer all 10 points. But if you're nervous about time, especially on FRQs, skip 1 or 2 of the explain prompts. They're going to be worth 1 point, just like the identify, but they're going to take way more time and knowledge. So, you know, skip 1 or 2 of them and then really take your time on your figure, graph, and experiment-based identify prompts. Take your time. I can't say this enough. Those points are totally within everyone's reach because you don't even need to know environmental science content to read figures or graphs or experiments and earn those points. So I don't want to say they're gimme points, but they are points that everyone can earn if they take their time. Trying to keep an eye on the chat here. It's picking up a little bit, but I really want to answer your questions more than anything because it's such a smaller group tonight. I can take the time to do that. And then I can just kind of point you in the right direction of what resources to use since, you know, I'll only be here for an hour and we can't review everything. So I want to back up a little bit here. Sarah, good question. What's the difference between today's live stream and the other two? Today, I'm going to be spending a lot more time looking at the chat and interacting with the chat. And that's because, like I just said, the group is smaller and those other 2 reviews already exist. So you can go watch them. Frankly, you guys, I've covered everything content-wise and math-wise, like exhaustively. You just have to go find those videos on the channel. So I'm not actually going to spend a ton of time tonight with like direct content. Do a little bit of key content, a little bit of math practice, and then I do want to spend some time though answering questions in the chat. Another question, Kiki, not going to go over everything by any means, just what I think is most important, which is math, and then pointing you in the direction of the right resources to study kind of down the home stretch. Do you know how many parts there will be to each FRQ? There will be 10 points, Ashley. The math questions will be worth 2. We don't know exactly how many parts, like A, part 1, 2, 3, you know, B, part 1, 2, 3. The bottom line, though, Ashley, is there'll be 10 points. On the math one, there will be 6 points that are math. Each of the math will be worth 2, one for setup, one for the actual answer. And so that's what we know about the FRQs. Rudy, really hard to guess about the topics on the FRQs, but you know 6 of the 30 points are math. So that is where we're going to focus some of our effort tonight. All right. Great question for identify. What you need for identify is a complete thought. So Kavi, if it's a graph that says identify the year in which corn production surpassed 10,000 bushels per acre, you would just say 1991 or something. You know, you would just be giving a date. Or on the other hand, though, if it says like describe, you know, a benefit, or that would be described, but identify a benefit of biodiversity in some sort of forest, you wouldn't just want to say like food webs or like solid food webs. You'd want to say something like the more species there are present, the more stable the food web. So one complete thought. If it's numerical, just the number's fine. If it's like look at this diagram and identify a primary producer, you know, grass or whatever type of tree you're talking about is fine. But if it's anything that requires a sentence, I'd be safe and just give a sentence, but it doesn't need elaboration. Let me pin the link tree, Kyra. So Kyra's our chat moderator if you're just popping in. She's awesome. She's a great APE student, and she can answer your questions from a content standpoint and from kind of a writing standpoint. So she's doing a phenomenal job. Just keep the questions coming in the chat, and she'll try to touch base on anything I don't touch base on. All right. We're going to keep going here. One thing I do want to point out is we're not going to talk about specific, we're not going to talk specifically about the second digital exam, because that is not something that's permitted by College Board. So we're not going to ask people what the questions were about. We're not going to we really shouldn't even ask like how it went. We're just going to steer clear of that because those questions are secure. They're not released to the public. So we may talk about the FRQs that were publicly released on the first exam, but we may not talk about any of the exam content from the second exam. So I know it's tempting to be like, oh, you know, how did it go? But we're just going to steer clear of that because it's the College Board's policy that stuff is not released, so it's not talked about. But the good news is we have a ton of content to review and plenty of other things to do. A couple more pieces as we move on here. Make a claim means that you need at least one sentence of support beyond your basic claim. And that support should be from a data table, figure, or graph if it's provided. So you need support with a make a claim. You can't just say it and just like move on. And then the other thing is to use exact terms in prompts to describe IV and DV, independent variable, dependent variable. And then this is the last one. Be sure that you know percent change and that you can show your units in math-based prompts. So you have to show your units in a math-based prompt. You cannot leave what we call naked numbers out there. You have to use units. And then I have no down here, or new, NOO, because that is the acronym for remembering new minus old over old times 100. You have to know percent change. It's been on the practice questions. It's been on AP Classroom questions. The released 21 FRQs from the first set, which we are allowed to talk about, those had percent change, so you have to know percent change. So, yes, let's move in now to some specific talking about math because it is so important. So showing your work. I just mentioned this, but it's really, really important. And let me make sure I'm not covering up too much here. Oh, good. It looks like I'm all right. All right. We'll just move me over here so I'm not in the way. There we go. So again, it's super critical if you want to earn both points on each math question that you show your work. And so just type out your work with standard symbols. Make sure you're using a plus sign, a minus sign, just the slash for division, X for multiplication, show an equal sign, and then be sure to use parentheses if they're needed. The other thing you could do is know that even if you are setting something up in a way that's not like dimensional analysis, like you're just thinking through it, there's 500, gallons of oil in like each well, and each well can be extracted at a rate of however many gallons per minute. Like you can just write things out even like, there are 50 barrels extracted per minute, and then there are 60 minutes in an hour, and there's, however many hours in 2 weeks or something. So you could write it out. It just has to be logically followed by your reader. So that is what I think is helpful. All right. If we look at practicing math, there are 3 things you need to know, and we're going to look at these practice questions shortly. You need to know percent change. You need to know population growth using CBR and CDR, and you need to know the rule of 70. So we're going to talk about that in a second. One thing I want to point out quickly in the chat for the person asking about dependent independent, Rudy, I like to remember IV, I the scientist manipulate the IV, the independent variable. DV is the data that are being gathered. It depends on the independent. And then also just make sure to check out the FRQ videos. There's 3 FRQ videos, one for each type of FRQ on my channel if you're worried about the FRQ format. Yes, we can talk about rule of 70. Let's look at that here now, actually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this presentation, and I'm going to go to my link tree. And remember, the link tree is pinned in the chat. And so if you look at the chat, you are going to see the link tree. Good question, Rebecca. Rule of 70. So let's go to Kristen Shapiro, Top APES Topics and Equations to Study. She is a rock star APES teacher. She grades exams. She is really knowledgeable. And so I love her presentation here. And you can get to these slides that I'm showing right now by using the link tree that's pinned in the chat. It'll also be in the video description if you're watching the replay. And so remember, a lot of times in the chat, people ask, hey, can you share those links that you're using? Share the presentation. It's all in the link tree. So everything we use tonight will be in the link tree. And so here we go. Here is Kristen Shapiro's recommendations. And so if you guys want to follow along, you can go there. All right. So let's take a look here at the math portions. Here we go. So we're on slide 8 if you're following along with us. So rule of 70 is the number of years it takes to double for a population. So you would just divide 70 by the annual growth rate as a percent. So if your country is growing at a rate of 2%, it's just 70 divided by 2. That means it would take 35 years to double. Now, to find the growth rate as a percent, you're going to use this other equation that's right on the screen here, crude growth rate, aka natural annual increase. And that's going to be CBR minus CDR divided by 10, where CBR is the crude birth rate, the births per 1,000 people, and CDR is the crude death rate, the result, or the deaths per 1,000 people. And so that is the equation that you need there. If you're nervous about these and you want more practice, I'm not going to actually walk through one of these tonight, but you can go to my channel and I walk through both rule of 70 and crude birth rate and death rate to determine growth rate with my math-based video. So you can go find that on my channel if you are interested. Okay, let's take a look at percent change because this one we need to know. So the new value minus the initial value divided by the initial times 100. That's where you have the new, new minus old over old times 100. I don't think you'd need to know rate of change. It's possible. It's come up on exams like 2008 or 12 was the last year I remember seeing it. I wouldn't worry about it though. I would worry about percent change. I would worry about rule of 70, crude birth rate. And then the final type of question is sometimes what people call dimensional analysis, but you do not need to set it up like this. Like you could just write out, 3 times 10 to the 7th barrels, in 1 month, and then multiply 2 barrels of water per barrel of synthetic oil. Like you could actually write the word per out, and then multiply again 12 months per year. Like if you think through it more as like a word question, that's fine as well. Yes, Kyra is a student, but she is like a verified student. Like she is, she's legit. She knows her stuff. She took the exam. She did really well in the class. And so definitely trust her advice. Okay. Let's jump to another resource now that's in the link tree. So now we're going to go to the 2021 released FRQ set number 1. So this is released from the College Board. This is their, information. Like they own these questions, but they are publicly released. And so we're just going through, publicly released information here. So what I want to do is go down to the math. So the first FRQ is going to be kind of stimulus based, and it'll also be experiment based. So they'll give you an experiment, all those things. The link to the math-based video. Yeah, let's just do this real quick. I will pop into the chat the playlist that I'm talking about, and then I'll pin that as well. While we're going there, though, what we're going to do next is the math portion of this. So again, I see a handful of you are on this document with me. And so you can just grab that link, which is the unofficial guidelines set for the FRQ number 1. But what I'm going to do is pop the math review link into the chat because I know that's going to be helpful for people. So here we go. I'm not going to pin it. So if you're really interested in jumping ship for that, you'll want to go over there. But what I'll do is also make sure it's in my link tree after tonight's video. All right. So back to the unofficial scoring guide for the 2021 exam set number 1. What I think is so helpful about looking at this is like this is what was on the first exam. And again, we are allowed to talk about this. The College Board released this, and so it's maybe the best look at what it is you might have to do. So let's start with letter E here, because letter E is the first question where we have a, let's see, first place where we have a math-based question, basically. So when we look at this here, we have a male wood thrush needs a minimum of 800 meters squared of territory for reproduction. The Municipal Development Committee has set a biodiversity preservation target of 275 male wood thrush territories. Calculate the area that must be set aside to support the goal. So very simple. 800 meters squared per male wood thrush times 275 males, and we're at 220,000 meters squared. Notice that we're very clear about the units. Really, they should probably have, wood thrushes here if we really want to be specific, right? So now we're looking at, just the average area, meters squared that one male wood thrush requires, multiplied by the male wood thrushes, and there we are. So notice this isn't really, you could say this is dimensional analysis, but you don't have to set it up in the traditional kind of setup for dimensional analysis. I think sometimes students get confused by where things go, like above or below the line for dimensional analysis. And that's why I think it's nice to just write it out on one line like this. So this one's pretty easy, right? Now let's go down to the next one, which is going to be a little bit trickier. So on the next question here, a real estate developer wants to build houses on the property. The plan will support 1,000 lots with a lot size of 1,100 meters squared. The developer has proposed setting aside land equal to 10% of the size of each lot itself. Calculate the maximum number of male wood thrush territories that could be created under this proposal. So what we're doing is we're taking the fact that each lot is 1,100 meters squared, and we're multiplying that by 0.1, which is the same as taking 10% of it, because the developer is willing to set aside 10%. So 10% of one lot is going to be 110 meters squared, and that's per lot. So that's basically like saying 10% of one lot is 110 meters squared. And if there are 1,000 lots, you're going to multiply that by, the 110 meters squared per lot. Now we have 110,000 meters squared. That's the total area that the developer will set aside for wood thrushes. Now we need to know how many territories can be supported by that. So if we look here, 110,000 multiplied by one male per 800 meters squared. See, personally, I would just write 110,000 meters squared divided by 800 meters squared per male wood thrush. And that would also work. Multiplying by 1 over 800 is the same as dividing by 800. And so it doesn't really matter how you set it up. You just have to have your answer be logically followed by the reader to arrive at your answer. So again, like personally, I would not multiply by one male over 800 meters squared. I would just divide by 800 meters squared, and I would put like per male, and that's fine. You're gonna get points for that. Okay. Let's see here. So let's go back to the other set now. So we're switching gears to the second set. I'm trying to catch up with Lena's question here. It depends how fast you are. If you're super fast, and then Doodlebob, I think you could show work with X if you clarify what X means. I'm trying to think of a problem where like that would be applicable. But I mean, I think you could if you clarify what X means. I don't see any reason why not. Again, the big thing is your work has to be clearly able to be followed by the reader. Yes, and if you calculate, no explanation necessary, purely numbers and words, of course, the labels, right? Units. No naked numbers. It's got to make sure that you don't leave your numbers naked. Okay, yes, you do get a calculator on the exam, but make sure your exam proctor actually has the calculator. So like they should be physically there at school for you, or you could bring your own. Yeah, they shouldn't mix calculate and explain. They should keep them clear. Like they might say calculate something and then explain it in the next part, but you should never have like explain your calculation. That would not be anything that we've seen before or would expect to see. Okay, on we go to another math question. All right. So, Rudy says, do the math questions progressively get harder? I would say that there is an easy, medium, hard. I would agree with what Kyra said. Like, one of them is maybe not a gimme, but is pretty straightforward. One of them is medium difficulty. It's going to take a little bit more. And then one of them is going to be clearly harder than the other two, I feel. So, and I'll walk you through these here. So here's your easy one. In this set here, this is your easy one. You got to be able to get percent change. Remember, percent change, new minus old over old times 100. So calculate the percent change in the average annual particulate matter 2.5 concentration in the air from 1990 to 2016. 2016 is our new number because it's newer. 1990 is our old number because it's older. So new 188 minus old 85 all over old 85. Now they put equals 103 in here and then divide again, but you could also write this out, you know, like I have it over here. So that one would work too. Now on percent change, you don't need to say necessarily what the units are because it's already stated, calculate the percent change in average annual PM. So you know it's percent change in that because the prompt told you. All right. How can you tell what formula you should use if they do not directly say it in the question? Really, the only formula you're likely to need, Nima, is percent change. Like here, notice it says calculate the percent change. They'll make it very clear if you should be doing percent change. And percent change is just new minus old over old times 100. So that's really the only, you know, really the only formula you need. Possible they ask you to do, oh, where'd it go now? All right, sorry, I got to go back to Kristen Shapiro's slides. It's possible they ask you to do calculation, but of population growth rate, that is, but it hasn't been on any of the first exams that were released. Doesn't mean it won't be on the next one, but it's more likely that it's going to be kind of dimensional analysis style. And in this case, percent is our unit, so you should be putting percent at the end here. They might ask you population growth rate. They might. So, and if you go look at my review video, no, you don't need to add PG per milligrams cubed. Micrograms, I see what you're going for. No, you don't need to, because your units is percent. Your units are percent, the percent change, and they've clarified that it's average annual PM 2.5 concentration already. So you're good to go. Good question though. Down here we do need units because they're saying calculate the decrease in PM 2.5 removal in kilograms, and so they're clearly stating it needs to be in kilograms. So you should have, you know, kilograms decrease in PM 2.5 removal at the end of your answer. So this is an example of a medium. A little bit more to it, but it's still pretty easy. So if a tree can remove, what is it? Average annual removal is 2.3 kilograms per hectare. Calculate the decrease in 2.5 in PM 2.5 removal in kilograms if logging reduced a forested area from 50,000 hectares to 43,000. So essentially we know that's 7,000 fewer hectares. We just did 50,000 minus 43,000. And if each hectare, you know, removes 2.3 kilograms of particulate matter from the air, you're just multiplying 2.3 times 7,000. And there you are, you're at 16,100. And then you're going to tack on to the end kilograms of PM 2.5 decreased in terms of the removal. So there you go. All right. Let's see. Yes, Kyra is definitely, she earned her her apes versus everybody pin. So my students, when they complete all of their video notes, they get apes versus everybody merch. So that they all get a pin, and she earned hers, that's for sure. Big time scholar. All right. This is what I would call the hard math question. So what they're saying here is it's tricky because they're mixing percentage. They're like doing 1% with every 10% and then saying that the cities experience a 23% increase. So here's how to think through this one. If you have a 23% increase in PM in the air, and you know that there's a 1% cardiovascular problem increase with every 10% increase, you're basically dividing that 23 by 10. So a 23% increase in PM means a 2.3 increase in admissions to the hospital. And if you're going to multiply to figure out what's 2.3% of 7,390, since those were the admissions in 1 year, and you want to calculate how much they'll increase by, you're going to do 0.023 times 7,390 admissions. Now, this rounded up question mark should be yes. You should round this up because you can't have 0.97 of a hospital admission, right? Hospital admissions are full people. So you should round up if you're talking about a full person. Great question, Caitlin, when it comes to sig figs. I would say in general, go to the whole number if it's something that comes in whole quantities like people or wood thrushes. Now, if it's something that does not come in whole numbers like percent, 121.1 is good. Probably just going to the tenths place is okay. Doodlebob, let's see. What are the metric unit conversions that you need to know? I mean, as you've seen on these two FRQs, you didn't actually have to do any metric conversions. I would just say watch out if they give you a number of grams and then ask for an answer in kilograms. Know that there are 1,000 kilograms in a gram. I'd say kilo is the big one to know. Kilo is 1,000, so whatever your base unit, like grams or meters or liters, but make sure you know your base units. So that would be then just moving up 1,000 for kilo. I don't think you're gonna have a lot of metric conversion though. Good question. Yeah, so I want to point out We Legends 21. Oh, I get it. I thought it would only go up 2% instead of 2.3. No, you need to make sure you keep that sig fig in there. So 23, because for a 23% increase in PM in the air, there is a 2.3% increase. So that's very important. You don't want to round that number there. Definitely don't round it all during the calculation. That would definitely throw your answer off. So you want to make sure you're not rounding during the calculation. Yeah, and that's a great point. Kiki has pointed out on the digital practice scoring guide, which is, again, publicly released. It's information you can find online if you Google it. It had some leniency, right? Like you could have 121.1 or 121 or 121.09 maybe. Probably not in this case, but in other cases potentially. So. All right. So we have like 15 more minutes, and what I'd like to do is really a couple things. I'd like to, more than anything, point you in the direction of which resources to study, but then I'd like to try to answer last minute questions. And I want to keep the questions that I answer more to formatting and writing FRQ and math rather than content, because again, the content is out there. Like there are videos for every single concept. So if you're weak in a unit or a topic, check that video out. If you're weak on environmental solutions, which someone said in the chat at some point, check that playlist out. I'll show you those things. But what I'm going to do is use these last 15 minutes to show you what to do in the last few hours of studying, and then answer questions that you have about math and about writing, since that's the most productive use of our time, I think. I can't do that later. So let's go to the link tree. And again, the link tree is pinned in the chat. So if you haven't already gone to the link tree, make sure that you go to the link tree. Check it out. It has everything you need to know. Someone said that they were concerned about environmental problems and solutions. So check out this playlist, which is in the link tree, Environmental Problems and Solutions. check out this playlist. It's 30 videos long, so it's pretty long. Oh, 20 only. Never mind. But either way, you're probably not going to watch 20 videos tonight. But just know that in each of these videos, there are some specific solutions to environmental problems. So I might go through and pick some of these videos for topics that I'm especially worried about. Like if I am concerned about energy, I might go through and watch, 6.7, 6.9, 6.12. So those can be helpful resources to use. So let's check the chat here and again try to answer some questions. Oh, good question. AG, who is another channel regular. AG needs a big shout out. She has been working super hard all year. Maybe not all year, but like most of the year. AG's been a big channel supporter and ape scholar, so she gets a shout out for sure. A common set question is when you have a graph and then you have like 5 questions based on it. Or when you have a list of things, like a list of energy sources maybe, and then like this is the energy source that requires geological activity to be nearby. And then you would match it to the correct one. All right. Will the solutions be on the slide in the video? I'm not sure what you mean, we legends. If you mean the solutions to these math problems we're doing, they were in here, or if you mean the solutions to the videos in my FRQ playlist, yes, they'll be in there. Ooh, Doodlebob, good question. A little bit. I talk a little bit about the Ring of Fire in my 4.1 video, but I don't go super in depth. I wouldn't be terribly concerned about different plate boundaries on the map. I would look more so into like what happens at divergent, convergent, and subduction. Well, I guess that's a type of convergent, but divergent and convergent and transform. Let's see. Any one topic video you'd recommend we watch before the test? All right, great question, Kavi. This is one of my favorite questions. If you could watch only one video before the test, I'd probably watch 9.5 because it's in Unit 9 and it covers a lot. It's actually a 2-parter. So that's kind of a cop-out. But Unit 9 is 15 to 20% of the exam. So if you've covered everything all year and you feel decent about everything, I'd review Unit 9. The other thing you can do, Kyra pointed this out, I have a top 10 must-know exam topics playlist. And the way I created this playlist, oh, we don't need to watch YouTube while we're on YouTube. But the way I created this playlist is by going through each unit and picking what I thought was the most important topic in that unit and the topic people get confused about the most. And so, for instance, we have the carbon cycle, introduction to biodiversity, soil, agriculture, fossil fuels, introduction to air pollution, human impacts on wetlands, and then 9.5 part 1 and 9.10. So biodiversity and global climate change. So if you only have a couple, like an hour or two left to study and you want videos, I would hit the top 10 must know. The other thing that does is it gives you hopefully the most broad coverage so that something that's in these videos comes up on your FRQ. That's kind of what I'd recommend. All right, let's see what other questions we have. You can use scientific notation or you can type out all the zeros. Either way, your reader's going to give it a shot. They're going to try to understand what you're writing about and they're going to, make an effort to understand it. Yeah. Good questions. Good questions, definitely. What energy processes would you say are the most important to know? Good question, Giada. Let's go to the slides for top 10 must-know exam topics. This should also be in here. I don't know if it is. Let me share this real quick. Oh, it looks like it is because you guys found it. But if we go in here and we look at energy processes, this slide, I love this slide here. And let me make sure my head's not in the way, as it usually is when I present something new. Oops. All right, there we go. So when we look at this fossil fuel diagram here, the reason I think this is so helpful is because anything that can generate heat, whether that's burning a fossil fuel or biomass or even geothermal, heat in the Earth's core that can turn water into steam. Basically, this process here, this slide, is so applicable to all these different energy forms. So if you can get water to be heated into steam, you can use that steam to power a turbine. So you're taking the kinetic energy in the steam to push it through a turbine. Now the spinning turbine represents mechanical energy. Then the mechanical energy is transformed into electrical energy by the generator. And now we have electricity. So this slide right here is huge. Like I would really study this if I didn't feel confident about energy. Really, really kind of all encompassing when it comes to energy. So all right. As we go on here, again, just understanding that the turbine generator electricity sequence is not just for fossil fuels, it's for wind. It's for hydroelectric too. That's just huge. That's a big, big concept to understand. So I'm going to go back to the link tree, but what I'll do is keep an eye on the chat and try to answer a few more questions as we wind down here the final couple of minutes of this live stream review here. Rudy, it's hard to say whether or not you'd have to describe them in detail. It's possible on an FRQ you have to describe steps. It's not where I'd focus my effort though, because it's not the biggest exam topic. If you want to see something that might make you feel a little bit better, this is the APES CED, the course and exam description. This is from College Board. So I want to show you in here exam. Let's see. Oh, that's going to be everywhere. Let's look through the table of contents to see here. I think we need to go to exam overview. There we go. So check this out right here. If you're concerned about knowing what to review, this should help you, right? Unit 1, 6 to 8% of the exam. Unit 2, 6 to 8% of the exam. Then everything else is 10 to 15, all the way up to units 7 and 8, which is 7 to 10. And then unit 9 is 15 to 20. So when in doubt, study unit 9. I don't want to tell you not to worry about units 1 and 2 because there will be questions about them. You might have an FRQ based on them, but I wouldn't be concerned tonight with the biogeochemical cycles. Maybe brush up on them, especially carbon cycle. Like the carbon cycle is big. So if we go to this first slide here and take a look at the carbon cycle, it might be helpful to review this just because of how, impactful it is to the atmosphere, to biodiversity, to ecosystems. So if you're going to study a biogeochemical cycle tonight, make it the carbon cycle. All right, let's check out a couple other questions here. Kiki says, will we need to talk about specific air pollutant and greenhouse gas sources and effects? Very strong chance, Kiki, that you do need to talk about specific air pollutants and greenhouse gases, sources, and effects. So let's actually go to that really quickly. There's a slide on that in here. So if we go, we should be able to find that. Yeah, here's a slide about the greenhouse effect. So it's not going to be all the individual gases on this slide, but you can definitely go check out video 9.4 and video 9.5 for some very specific greenhouse gases themselves. We've got carbon dioxide, methane, CFCs. But you can check that video out if you're concerned about that, Kiki. Great question, though. You probably will have to talk about that. Another question, do we have to know exactly how solar panels work? Probably not. But in case you do, semiconductors emit a low voltage flow of electrons, aka electricity, when the sunlight hits them. Try to remember semiconductors. The likelihood that that's a big part of the exam is pretty slim. Yeah, Kyra's spot on. In general, when it comes to energy especially, you want to know the pros and cons of each. That's big, knowing the pros and cons, and then maybe the basics of how they're generated. But you're not going to have to go super in depth. All right. Could I roughly go over ocean acidification? Sure thing. Let me find that really quickly. Quality, probably not going to need to know details on each biome. Not nearly as likely. When ocean's warm, does it release CO2 because it reaches its capacity to hold CO2? Yes, essentially. Remember that the solubility of gases goes down as water temperature goes up. So it's an inverse relationship. So as water temperature rises, the amount of CO2 it can hold goes down. That carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere. So Doodle Bob, you are spot on with that. And then AG asked a question about ocean acidification. So let me show you guys also, this will be a great kind of way to wrap up, because if you're nervous about any individual topic or unit, one, you can go here to the APE CED, which is course and exam description, and you can find where it is, and you can actually use this to know what you have to know. So you do Control F, and we're going to search for ocean acidification. And I have to spell it right, though. And so there we have ocean acidification. So we're going to see that's going to be topic 9.7. And then we can go to it. And this actually tells you the essential knowledge you should have about ocean acidification. So you could even use this to study if you want to know, like, what are the key details I have to know for ocean acidification. And then if you want to find, well, where could I learn more about topic 9.7? Then you go to the All Apes Note slides in the link tree, of course. And then you're going to go to Unit 9 video notes. And everything's going to work slow because I'm streaming on YouTube. And my poor little HP laptop just can't quite handle the bandwidth of loading everything and streaming at the same time. So once this all loads, we'll go down and talk about ocean acidification. But again, that is kind of how I would go about finding information. Marissa, check out video 5.3 for tilling processes and issues with tilling. And then sustainable ag is going to be 5.14, I think. Yeah, 5.15. So go to my channel and check out 5.4 or 3 and 5.15. You'll find lots of info on tilling. I'm seeing a question about the PDF. This is the APES course and exam description. It's in the link tree right somewhere, right here, APES CED. You can also just Google AP Environmental Science, AP and exam description. So, all right. We're going to wrap up on ocean acidification because you never know, could be on the exam. And that will kind of be our final topic here. Yeah, if you're going to binge something, Unit 9, but also get your 8 hours of sleep. Don't binge Unit 9 at the expense of 8 hours of sleep. Get the 8 hours. But again, if you are going to cram, use Unit 9. The other thing is this is at 4 p.m. tomorrow, right? I'm pretty sure this is 4. So, you can study a lot during the day depending on where you are in the US. All right, so ocean acidification, here it is. We're gonna end on this note here, and just wrap things up for the night, and then we'll wish each other good luck and head to bed soon if you're on the East Coast. If you're on the West Coast, you got some time yet, probably. All right. So if we take a look at ocean acidification here, big thing to remember is that it comes from increased atmospheric CO2 level. And what happens is that CO2 actually dissolves directly into the ocean, and that dissolved CO2 then mixes with water to form carbonic acid. Just like the acid that's in soda, it gives the ocean a lower pH. That means more H plus ions are free. So the keys here you have to remember: CO2 in the atmosphere dissolves into the ocean, direct exchange, and then it combines with the ocean water to form carbonic acid. So CO2 in the atmosphere dissolves into the ocean, direct exchange, combines with water to form carbonic acid. That carbonic acid is the acidity. It's what makes the ocean acidic. If you really want to know the chemistry, it's because it dissociates into bicarbonate and an H plus ion, and H plus ion concentration is what makes the ocean acidic. You don't probably need to know that, but it can be helpful. Then when we go into why this impacts marine organisms, just want to talk about this quickly, and then we'll be done for the night. So because marine organisms make their shells using calcium carbonate, the ocean acidification basically means there's fewer carbonate ions. And that's because those carbonate ions combine with the H plus ions, and you get this bicarbonate here. So there's just less of the carbonate ion available. And that's because there's so many more H plus ions because the acidity, the carbonic acid, and that means fewer carbonate ions. And so the shells of the organisms can't be maintained, and it can actually dissolve their shells and take the carbonate ions from their shells. So they're going to be smaller, they're going to be weaker, they're going to be more prone to predators, and it's just going to be rough to be a shelled organism when your shell starts to break down. So that's kind of the basis of ocean acidification. It's worsened by climate change because of CO2 entering the atmosphere. So what I want to do now is wrap up, because we are after 9 o'clock here, and I want you guys to do a little more studying on your own, get some sleep, and I got to get out of here and get to sleep too. But what I'll do is just give you one final reminder of, like, here's what I would do tonight for maybe an hour or two, depending on which coast I'm on. I guess if you're in California, it's 6 p.m., so you got plenty of time. But if you're on the East Coast, you should go to bed, within the next few hours. But what I would do is, depending on my comfort level, I would really practice the math with these release FRQs, then the math practice on my channel. But if I were more nervous about a specific unit, I would review that unit. If you feel pretty good overall, I would do the top 10 must-know exam topics, or just hit Unit 9 really deep, because Unit 9 is going to be on the exam. So that would be my advice to everybody. So just taking a last second here to catch up with the chat, and wish you all good luck, answer a few last-minute questions. Do you guys have any tips on how to cram to the exam tomorrow? I'm watching the top 10. Yeah, I would do top 10, do the FRQs, do Unit 9, but get your 8 hours of sleep. You need 8 hours of sleep for any cramming you do today to actually stick. So if you stay up all night cramming, it never gets consolidated. That learning doesn't get turned into short-term or long-term memory. So you have to get your 8 hours. Think of 8 hours as like hitting the save button. So don't be nervous. We legends, if you're nervous, really just hit Unit 9 hard, and then maybe 6, because it's energy. That's a good chunk. So you guys got this. You know more than you think. I promise. You're going to get to the multiple choice tomorrow, and you're going to realize, like, oh, wait, I know this stuff. I'm okay. You're going to take a deep breath. Remember that your exam score does not define you. And then on the FRQs, you're going to write like a scholar as much as you can, read every question twice, get all the easy points, show your work on the FRQs, on the math, and make sure you know percent change. New minus old over old times 100, and you're good to go. All right, we're gonna wrap up. Thank you guys so much for joining tonight. I wish you all the best. Come back to the Instagram or the YouTube channel in the future, and share positive wishes with everybody. Hope it goes well for you guys. Recommend Apes versus Everybody in my YouTube channel to your friends that take Apes next year. Make sure they find it at the beginning of the year instead of halfway through the year. Yeah, just I love helping Ape students study, and knowing that you guys feel a little bit more confident going in is why I do this. So I really enjoy it. It's so great to see a nice turnout for this third exam. Good luck, everybody. And if you're familiar with the channel, you know how we wrap things up here. If you're not, if you're a little bit newer, we have 2 mantras in Apes. Think like a mountain, write like a scholar, and it's how we sign off our videos. And really how I'm signing off my year. This is kind of bittersweet for me because this is truly the end of Apes this year. So even though this is a small group compared to our other videos, like this is the end of a huge year for all of us. I mean, for taking Apes, but also for me just interacting with so many students, getting to know people. Like I said, AG has been so dedicated, quality, like just Ape scholars of the highest order. So thank you guys for making this a really fun year for me in terms of studying and prepping with students. It's what I'm all about and what I love to do. So there it is. Arush knows. So we'll sign off with the way we end every video, guys. Think like a mountain, write like a scholar. Good luck tomorrow, guys.